Been talking about these side panels for some time, about having to have to shrink them back because they had a pretty big belly and they were oil canning and everything. It's really doing my head in and I'm struggling a bit with it, but we're getting there. So what I've done is I've put the big shrinks here to take some of the metal out, and it's now really tight, but as you can tell it's quite wavy and we're still in a bit. But what we've been doing starting from this end now is doing smaller shrinks around that to take up some of that metal, and then this last piece here I've just run the shrink disc over it and then hit it with a bit of deoxidine just to get a feel and a look how it's going, and it's going pretty good. So we're going to work our way forward now doing more small shrinks and get it all tightened up, and then we can put a skim on it and we'll be all nice and flat. So just very briefly, and I mean this is not one of my biggest strengths, but what I'm doing is I'm heating a fairly reasonable size area, bringing all the heat in a high spot. I've got Darren on the inside with a big dolly. I'm then knocking that metal back into itself and then shrinking it with water. So that's the idea. Just push that middle, see if it'll come up, Darren. Yep. So I need the metal to come towards me, that's not to go inwards. Right, down under the big one, down towards the bottom. Yep. Now part of the idea here is when you heat that is to try and hit that metal back into the middle, so that when you quench it, it pulls the metal up, because we had too much metal between here and here. So it looks a bit messy. I'll do a couple more on some of the highs or lows, and then I'll use this same hammer with the dolly on the inside cold, hammer it up the best I can, then put the heat shrink disc on it. So I've hammered that up just with the flat hammer, the dolly on the inside. We're now just using the shrink disc on the inside because I don't want to sort of push it in this way, I want it to come this way a bit. So just running that over and that'll warm it up, and then I'll just put the damp rag on it and it'll bring down the highs and bring up the lows. So we'll just get him going again with that. So that was making enough heat that I couldn't touch it. It was quite burning. My hands are quite soft though because I'm doing a lot of panel beating at the moment, but you'd think they'd be hard, but I wear gloves all the time so they're soft. So that's getting to a point now where it's quite flat and the shrinks have pulled it up, and when we put the ruler on we've sort of got getting very close to what we need compared to down here where we've got this great big gap. Heat shrinking. So I talked about the fact that I was a bit worried about it, didn't know what I was doing, those sorts of things. So we ended up doing the ones up the middle and then the smaller ones that we filmed. Once we got all that done, there was a fair bit of movement in it. So I went through, had Darren on the inside with this, and then I've just gone along and hammered the whole thing. And the aim there was to flatten it out as much as we could. And after doing that, we ended up with pretty good, but still a little bit of movement and stuff in it. And then what we've done is use that shrink disc, the small one, on the inside. And the reason I did that was I want to get rid of the lows here because I want to bring it up. So by using on the inside, that was heating what was the highs on that side. And then I just put a cool rag on it. So we've gone back to the first side that we did now, and we're doing that over there. So we'll do a bit of footage of that. And that disc basically is just heat shrinking through the heat generated through that surface of that plate. So we'll go over the other side and do that. And then we're at a point now where I haven't got my ruler. We've just got a slight curve going this way, which is good because that matches up with here. So we've got a slight belly in the middle there, and I'm going to put that all the way through. And this is quite flat, and I'm more than happy now to put some epoxy on that, put skimmer filler on it, and block it out, and it'll be good to go. So I've put Darren on the inside, so he's going to run that, and I've got a wet rag and then a damp rag, and you'll see as he's doing it, I'm just following where he's going. And I mean, I was happy with this to where we were, and I'd run the disc on the outside, but having done that on the inside on the other one, this one almost looks like it's got hull damage. So we're just gonna, we've done a little bit, we're gonna do the rest of it now. Righto. Work. Back to the tailgate. So we're going to put the new skin onto the old frame. So I've painted both of those in 2K, just Deltron, and worked out, I've had it on, made sure it's going to fit, and it had a couple of things, just had to cut these corners out where it goes onto the frame, and that's there so when the tailgate goes up it actually clears the body where the rubber goes. And then drilled the holes along the top where that's going to plug weld on. So the original skin didn't have any spot welds around the perimeter, but it did have some adhesive through this line and also on these pads here. So we're going to do the same thing. So we'll run some adhesive on there and a bit on the back here, just some urethane. Sit it on, hammer all the edges over. Now, without putting your finger in the goo, so let this top edge in first. So we've already trial fitted this once. With some goo. Righto, it's pretty tight up into there. So we've drilled holes in the new panel, bend that over, plug weld those, roll all the other edges over. Going to put a little bit of timber under the back there so we can clamp that without doing any damage to the skin. This replacement skin seems to not quite have the full curve to it, but it will once it goes on. Beautiful. Now we're going to make some noise. I'm all out of muscles now because a long way around with the hammer. Really happy the way it's come up. Got a lot of little things to do. We've got to weld in around these edges, tidy up, and then plug weld across the top. But really happy the way it went on. And when we flip it over, it's quite heavy actually, this tailgate. Probably because we're going to sit on it. Really happy the way that's come out. The actual shape of it is the same all the way through. We've got a nice distinct straight line, and then this all feels very good, very uniform. So that'll be good for when we go do our body work. Be awesome. Well, that makes me feel a whole lot better. So I've sealed up those with Deltron DP616, and I've got the doors, the guards, and the outside of that tailgate that we just put back together. and I've just laid that one down to give you a bit of an idea. Really happy the way that's come up. Had quite a lot of dents in it, and I've got most of them. I missed one just here, a little one, so I'll get that. So that's all steel and looking really good. That new tailgate, we didn't seem to do any damage on that putting it on, which is nice as well. And I've got all the insides done, so I can now get ready to put those back together. And the backs of these, so these are the original skins. They've all been welded now, cleaned up, so I'll just check those out, repair anything we need to do, because I did a bit of work here. We'll start putting a bit of filler and stuff in. And I just got the spray gun in my hand because I used my Sada Jet 100 with a 1.4 nozzle, and I've done that, which, because I had them so good, if you use your 1.4 rather than going for a primer gun with a 1.8 or a 2, you actually get this nice flat finish. So I've put a couple of good heavy coats on them so I can start doing my filler, but by using that finer nozzle, it enables me to have a good look over them, see if I've missed anything and what I need to correct before I start doing my filler work. But I've done pretty well, so we'll move on now and do the filler work once we get them back together. When planning your project, make sure that you pick a product, a quality product, to go through the whole process. So whether it's your epoxies, your primers, all the way through to your finish, stay with the same brand, and that'll guarantee you, first of all, warranty with that particular company, but also knowing that all of those paints are designed to work together. My choice has been PPG. I've been with them 25 years and we've been able to produce some of the best paint work in Australia, and my trust is in them to continue to produce the products you need. Now, don't forget, they've got a premium range, a mid-range, which is the Deltron, and then you can go down to something like the Autothane. So PPG's got everything covered. Check them out. They're my choice. They should be yours. Righto, so more paint stripper. Didn't think I'd worry about filming that because we've shown you enough of that so far. I've got 99% of that product all off there. Looking pretty good. There's a few rust spots through here, you know, on a few edges, but I mean really, really good. We've tidied up, give that a sand with some 180, and where we'd straighten those up, we've done that with deoxidine. So I'm going to clean this up now with a strip disc and get that all ready, and then I'm going to paint all of that hopefully in the next day or so with the CF black epoxy, and then we can just about put the back half of the car to bed, I think. Well, what a chore that's turned into. So I ended up doing the whole lot. So I've done the floor, paint stripped that, found some rust, mainly just surface rust, but found some rust, cleaned all that up. So now I'm going to paint. So I've just quickly done a rough mask up underneath because I've got all that nicely painted. And I've degreased and pressure cleaned all inside the quarters. Got all that out the bottom, did that a couple of days ago, sanded all inside there. So now I'm going to run some of the CF black epoxy, get it all sealed up, then we'll be able to run some urethane and stuff around, and then I'll make a decision whether it needs any more paint, because none of this is going to get seen, but I don't plan on selling it, and I want to make sure it lasts the rest of my lifetime. Well, there we go. So back out of the booth. So that epoxy is like a satin finish, and I've done that now so that I can get in there and urethane up any joins. So between like the floor and this back panel had sealer in it, so I'll actually go around and seal that up again. And most of that's about just keeping moisture out if there is any moisture, but secondly, keep any dust from the road coming back inside the cabin. What I've started to do now is this has been in epoxy in DP616 for probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. So I'm just giving it a quick whiz over with some 240 And I'm doing that because I just want to make sure I haven't got any fallout. And before I did that, I washed the whole thing with Prepsol. And now I'm just giving it a sand. I'm not going to touch it with my bare hands now because I'm working through that process where I want to get it all cleaned up. And then I'm going to go into the booth and put the final coats of epoxy on before I start putting filler in. Now, these things here was where it had big rust areas because it had been under a tarp, if you hadn't been watching earlier, and then a little bit of rust along here. But we've cleaned all that up, the roof's been off, it's all been cleaned up, painted on the inside. Now I'm going to seal it up, get some filler into it. Up the front here, the same thing applies. It had an aerial here which we welded up, so I've just run the file over that to make sure I'm happy with that. Another one of those rusty spots. And then the front down here, while I've been messing around, Steve has stripped that out now. So that's the last of the floors, all underneath's already done. So I've just got a little bit of damage in these areas to fix. I reckon this car was picked up with a forklift at some stage before I got it. And I'll get all of that sealed up, inside, outside. That'll get me to here. And then we can start thinking about doing the engine bay. Righto, back out of the booth. I'm all set up now. Bathurst weekend, so I'm probably going to do some work while that's on. So I'm going to, I've got the telly out in the workshop. Got that there so we can watch the racing. And then I'm going to start filling the sides, and that roof's got to be filled. It'll keep me out of trouble for a few days. Well, sometimes you've got the best intentions. So ran it in out of the booth and it was all nicely painted, and my idea was to get some filler into the body, but Darren was coming up to have Bathurst with his mates on the Sunday and was able to work on the Saturday. So him and I ended up mucking in for about 6 hours on Saturday and got right into some of the heavy going stuff underneath, because I've been focusing on the body, but I knew quite well that I had some work under here to do. So a lot of these areas, I'm pretty sure that they'd picked it up with a forklift, and we needed to knock some of these down. So I've sort of got these back into pretty good shape. You can see that one still needs a little bit of work. So I've basically just been knocking them from the other side with a timber block, and then using a various range of dollies and hammers and stuff just to push them back into shape. Now, probably should have had the camera going, but Darren on the inside, me on the outside, no one to hold a camera. So we straightened up those, did a bit on the floors as well, you know, the normal sort of wear and tear dents. And this was a bit weird. This brace here, quite often these need replacing because they get hit, you know, on all sorts of things, whether it's a curb or a rock or whatever the car's been over. This particular one was sort of bent out of shape, and this side was way in, but it had the factory spot welds in it. So it's almost like when it was on the production line, it had been knocked out of shape or put in the wrong spot, but they just spotted it anyhow. And there's a few things on this car that's a bit like that. It's probably a late Friday Arvo car or something. So we unstitched that, put it back into position where we believe it should be so that it's sitting flush here. This was sticking way up above the sill, where they should be like this. So we've made it look like the other side, and then I just welded a tab on here and pulled out a bit of a dent that was in that one. And then those people that have been watching would know that this car had a pretty heavy shunt in the front on this side, and you can tell inside the firewall where they'd actually pulled that back forward and put a new radiator support. This inner skirt's been replaced, and these were replaced. So where we've been working here was because they'd welded the outside but they didn't plug them. So we've just gone through and replugged those, which I think I mentioned in one of the previous episodes. But I also noticed that this rail was bent down probably 10 or 15 mil. So we've applied some heat through here and got it back up to where it should be. And then this piece here, this whole structure of the car had gone back and bent this well and truly out of shape. So we've put a lot of heat in there, as you can see, and just got it back into looking very much like original. Still a little bit rough, but I'm more than happy with where I've got it to. We've run measurements all over this car and compared it to the factory manual in relation to squareness and lengths and all those, and it's all square and it's all good, but it's just untidy. So we've been going through doing that. So the next thing we're going to tackle was the firewall, because I knew that the engine had been back and hit the firewall, but they'd done some work to repair it. But when I went to bare metal list to do a little bit of heat shrinking and stuff, it was full of filler. So it had between 5 and 10 mil filler in here and then all up through the top. And you can see where we've had a whole lot of heat in here. So this is the handbrake bolts on here on the inside, and then the cable comes out, and you could see where the cable had been crushed back against the firewall. So I've just applied a bit of heat, dolly on one side, hammer on the other, to just pull all this back into shape. But when we go around the other side, this was in here, and then through here where this had gone back and then been pulled back into position, this was all out of shape. So we've worked away, dolly on the inside, heat on this side with a hammer, and I've pulled that back into shape now, and I'm very close. It still wants another probably hour or so on the hammer to get all this exactly flat how it should be, and it's still going to want a little skimmer filler. And then the same on this ridge here. It must have had a tear there where they've welded it up, and then this here was back in a long way, so I've done a fair bit of heat. And if we go around the other side, I don't know if I can get the camera in there somewhere, you'll see just the amount of heat that we've had to apply to get all that back into shape. So all of a sudden, you know, we lost 3 or 4 hours to get it back to where I wanted it. So this little plate here, we've taken that one off. That's the bolts that hold the carbon canister on from the other side, and with that in place we couldn't do the work we wanted, so we've just drilled out the spot welds, and I'll put that back in when I'm done, because where that was, the previous people that did the work on the car obviously went, oh, close enough, and we'll just fill it up. So I'm getting close. Most of these holes are factory holes that we'll need because it's an air-conditioned car. So this is your aircon, this one's your heater, and then, like I say, canister bolts. These ones here hold your brake lines. So there's all the different clips and things, and it's manual, so we need this one. And these are various grommets for your wiring and hoses and all sorts of bits and pieces. So what should have been, you know, an hour turned into 4 or 5, and I've still got a little bit to do, and hopefully when I move forward I don't find too much more, but there's a few little lines in here I might need to straighten up because I'm looking for pretty much a stock engine bay that's just a little bit tidier than the factory, but it's the way we go. So after doing that Saturday, Sunday morning I got up, did the lawns, the hedges, getting ready for the race to start so I could start working on the car, and I think I'd overdone it. So I didn't do any work on the car yesterday, but I plan to get back in and do a bit today. So a bit of a recap how we got to where we are now. So the roof had quite a lot of rust on it, and I removed the roof to do the gutters, fixed up all the problems, put it all back on again, and then I'd put it in DP616 while we were doing other work, and really just a light coat to stop it from getting surface rust. And then prior to what I'm doing now, I've sanded down everything where we'd been working on the gutters and all, got it all sanded down, and then put 2 good coats of DP616, which is the epoxy urethane primer. And what I'm doing now, that's been on here probably 4 days, and I'm just going over it with some Abralon 360, so it's the equivalent of P360. You can use like some soft 240 in some of the areas, and I'll show you some of that in a moment. But I've got some more Merlon just in a square pad that I'll go around and do all the edges. So my plan today is I've just give the whole thing a buzz. Once I've done that, I'll clean it up with some Prep-Sol, get rid of the dust, and then I can start doing my filler work. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the edges first, because I've got, first of all here where the transition is, I've welded plates in, and then along this bottom edge here, there was quite a bit of rust that we sandblasted out and repaired while the skim was off. So now I'll need to repair that with some body filler. So I'll show you the process as we go, but first of all, the machine, and then by hand, Prep-Sol it off, and I'll be ready to start doing some filler work. Waiting for it to stop. So the advantage of using the machine over doing it, you know, it's given it a quick scuff. There's very little dust left on it, and as you can tell, there's no dust in the air. So working on that whole dustless theory, we can do that, and you'll see with the filler, the same thing applies when we use all of that Velcro back with the vacuum. So I'm just taping this up because I don't want to get this gutter full of filler, because it's going to be really hard to get out afterwards. So I've just gone along, put that into the bottom edge, because once we get our filler work done, and probably end up using some spray poly on it, I'll keep them gutters protected because I don't want it all fill up. So I'll put that on so I can start doing the filler, but the reality is we're going to run out of time for this episode. So we're going to hold this now. That pretty much gets us to where we're at. This will go up tomorrow, so then I can start working along, and I think Darren's back next week. We'll probably start putting some panels back on and doing some gaps and things. So I'm just trying to balance what I do with what I can do with Darren. And I'm heading off to SEMA at the end of the month, so it's all getting close and got plenty to do. So thanks for joining us again. I know it seems a bit drawn out, but this is how long cars take. We don't have the ability to have 20 people working here and be able to put a car together in 3 or 4 episodes, but I know with the comments that you're all enjoying what we're doing. If you are, make sure you share the video with your friends. Click the like button. If you haven't subscribed, do that as well for us. And I looking forward to getting over to the US and bringing some of the stuff that they're doing over there. And I'll get back then and get this van into some primer for Summernats.